Hello, dear viewers. I have an idea for a reading inspired by something John Kelly said, who is turning out to be quite the asshole. Sorry, but I had to say it. He shrugged his shoulders about the children being taken away from their parents at the border and said, well, when Americans go to prison, they don't get to take their kids with them. And I thought, that's true. And that is a problem because the American incarceration rate is the highest in the entire world. Our country, highest incarceration rate in the entire world. 4.4% of the world's population lives here. 22% of the world's incarcerated lives here. We know that it is unfair. We know that there is discrimination. There is out of implicit bias for who gets searched, who gets stopped, all of those things. We have much higher rates of imprisonment for minorities. We know that. That's documented. It's well documented. And we have a thriving private prison industry. The estimated turnover of $74 billion in the private prison industry. Well, not all those are private, but many of them are. Eclipses the GDP of 133 nations. It's the American taxpayer who foots this bill. And there are publicly traded corps like Corrections Corporation of America and the GEO Group. Both companies combined generate over $2.53 billion in revenue in 2012. Represents more than half of the private prison business. So these two companies, look into them. In the 1980s, it began to raise our rate of incarceration just hugely. And then into the 90s, especially then it took another big jump up when we had Bush Sr. and W were in. Huge jumps up. It peaked in 2008, and since Obama, it's gone down a bit, but it's still very, very, very high. It's just gone down a little, not enough. I don't know how many people in the U.S. now have a criminal history. 10 years ago, it was 1 in 6. I'd imagine it's more than that now, which really impacts their abilities to get jobs, to get mortgages, apartments, things like that. And yes, these children are separated from their parents. So, the young and the poor dominate our prison populations. They can only afford public defenders. Big generational money plays a part with the 10 of Pentacles. So we have a really messed up penal system right now. I want to ask Universe about the past, present, and future of our penal system and our legal system. Because it's gotten, frankly, just completely out of hand. It's become a weapon. It's become a cash cow for private corporations, but it's become a weapon too, I think, for controlling the poor. So, what do we have? Death in the past. Okay. I feel like that's universe reminding me not to forget that people, it does such destruction. Imprisonment does such destruction to people and to their families. It is not rehabilitative. It is, research is, very decades and decades has shown that prison or incarceration in jail does not lessen the person's risk of future offenses. It actually increases it. So the idea of punishment as a deterrent and imprisonment punishment as a deterrent is a bunch of BS, and people have known that for decades. We have the sword of truth, though. People have begun to say, this is ridiculous. And we have the 10 of Wands. I feel like that is, people are so overburdened. They're so overburdened. People are falling out of steady jobs and out of steady housing at alarming rates, right? We have a working class, and this is a working man who is working in middle class too, who are completely overburdened, stressed out, tired. They can't do this forever. Some of them have resorted to drug use. I've known people who've told me that methamphetamines was something that really helped them get a lot of work done and focus at work and not get fired and be able to go home and work. And it was sort of their effort of their last ditch resort to trying to save what they had, any stability they had built for their family. And I hope that those who are listening who are more conservative in nature aren't thinking I'm excusing illegal behavior. I'm not. I think people don't excuse it in themselves usually. I'm not excusing that, but I'm saying we see crime rates spike up, and we see deaths of desperation, like from drug overdoses and things like that. We see that increase when poverty increases. It's just a fact. Again, the facts. Let's focus on the facts. They should, in a enlightened society, they should supersede your political leanings, right? Let's look at the facts. In the present, we have the Empress. And she is a new possibility. So the Empress is a very powerful energy, bringing a new possibility for change in this area. And I think it started a lot with protests that have highlighted the problems with higher rates of imprisonment for minorities. They've started it. And for everybody who's attended those kinds of protests and called their Congress people and called their lawmakers, thank you. That's the start of it, the reform. But we've only got a possibility, you guys, right here in the present. We haven't gotten much leverage yet. And we do still have the powerful multi-generational companies, corporations, deep pockets that are invested in these corporations. We still have that as a problem. Okay. And they still have a lot of power. But we have the Ten of Cups. Happy families. So I wonder what that all means. It's an American value. I feel like that's saying, okay, don't forget. I feel like Spirit is saying to me, don't forget about the strength in your country. Don't forget that trying to raise happy families, healthy children is an extremely important value in our culture. That's a good thing. That's on the asset side. Okay. All right. In the future, we have completion. The world. So what in the world? That looks good. But we have conflict. And we have, I'm kind of looking at if you've got all the cards in the view. Yeah, you do. Okay, we have the World Explorer. We have something about international relationships. Well, we know the UN has just put out a report, a very blistering report, about the cruelty of separating the children from their parents, and that's quite a violation of international standards. So we have had that. So maybe our international relationships are helpful here. Maybe. But then that can be international trade. That is one product that's difficult to export, though, isn't it? Oh my gosh, I hope the U.S. isn't going to export its ideas on incarceration. Okay, so we have death. Yeah, and that's a reversal, you guys. So the Hierophant is reversed, meaning the government's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. It has actually become destructive in this case. In this particular issue, it's become destructive. But justice. Okay, so in the past, this is the past column. So justice is coming forward to say it's got to change, bringing truth. Justice, Lady Justice is making some demands here. Okay, and we have the overburdened, poor or near poor American worker, the tower in the past. I think that's what I said, that for many of these folks, especially with the recession. And since then, things haven't picked up a lot for the average American family. That really did drop people through the cracks to the place where they were desperate and they were doing illegal things. Too many tower moments for them. Too many blows, too many blows. The wage stagnation, income hasn't gone up appreciably for most Americans in over 40 years, 30 years. Oh my gosh, 30 years, 30 plus years. And, there's only so many blows. Then we add this blow with the higher rates of incarceration and much more strict drug sentences and things like that for people who do then fall through the cracks and use drugs to cope, which is not okay. But again, I've had the privilege of being a helper. So I've heard a lot of stories, and they are heartbreaking. It's really easy to judge from a place of position, a higher position, from a place of no criminal history and having lived middle class all one's life or better. It's easy to judge from that place of privilege. But when you really hear the stories, you realize, oh my gosh, that could happen to anybody. It's not usually an issue of character. All right, so we have King of Cups clarifying the new beginning. So we're going to become more loving and emotionally attuned here, and healing and nurturing. Compassion, that's the word I'm looking at. Compassion is just beginning. It's just a possibility right now. It's like wanting to be born. A new, whoa. Universe meant that one. That generational money. It's the huge problem at the center of the reading, times 2. Oh my gosh. That's the issue. So Spirit is telling us that is the issue. It's way too profitable. And people invest in these companies on Wall Street. And we have the 8 of Cups, off in search of something more fulfilling, leaving. Okay, so I interpreted this to mean, like Spirit was saying, but don't forget, this is an important American value. A happy and healthy family is important to us Americans. So the 8 of Cups is saying we've got to do something different. We've got to have a different plan. We're not having enough happy and healthy American families. We have to do something different. So we're off in search of that in the present. So we see some good things happening in the present, sort of the very beginning of eyes being opened regarding this. I think criminal histories and things are such a shameful subject for people that they keep them to themselves. You know what I mean? They don't want to tell anybody. It's a social problem, but they take it as an individual failure, so they don't want to talk about it, and that makes it difficult. That makes it difficult for the truth to come out, this sort of truth here. But it's already begun coming out. And maybe it's people who don't have a criminal history, who, had privilege and were able to say, to look at them and say, gosh, that was largely luck that I didn't end up in the same place, and it's not about a failure of character. It's, I don't know. You can work hard all your life and work hard. I used to think that, I'm a very hard worker. All my success is my own. But, as I matured, I realized, oh, heck no. There was a heck of a lot of luck there. It's something we all need to mature into, I think. So, Queen of Swords. That truth again, that truth that will not be denied. The Queen and King of Swords always coming up. Completion. So the end of this cycle is coming up is what I'm seeing. Now, we don't in this future column yet, we don't yet have a new, we have it in the Empress, the possibility of a new beginning. We don't yet have a new beginning. Let me see if I can... But we have things happening very quickly. We have conflict. Okay, so in other words, as things have gotten worse and worse, there are more and more protests, and there's a lot of change there. That's really going to be the impetus of the change. It's really, it's really going to be those who have been most hurt by all of this. That's the impetus of the change. And like I said, I think we're already beginning to see it with protests over the racial inequality represented in our prison populations. All right, and we have Ace of Wands here, a new purpose. Well, and so this is about exploring internationally. You know what I'm seeing? I am seeing people actually studying it out. Wouldn't that be refreshing if our government would pay attention to that kind of thing? You know, real facts, real figures, real studies, real research. That would be great. I see a new interest in seeing what's working for other countries and people saying, let's do that. But yeah, it's going to be a little while, unfortunately, because I'm seeing the end of a cycle coming up in the future, but I'm not. And definitely the power of the new beginning is coming up big time. And things will happen very quickly. But what I see in the future, in the next few months, several months, this column is a lot of times that would be increasing conflict about this very issue. And changes, demand for changes, and plans being brought forth by legislators who are looking at other countries. And the end of this cycle, anyway, because truth is coming out about the businesses, I think. So, yeah, I mean, at least we're turning a corner, I think, in the future, but it's going to be a while. It's actually going to get, yeah, we're going to have a lot more noise about this issue until we get improvement in it. All right. Well, you know, we send our intention into the universe for reformation around this issue and for, gosh, more love and compassion and truth in our legal system. Thank you so, so much. Bye-bye.